Today we are talking about rhetoric, the art of effective persuasion.
Let us see a comic first. So, this is a comic of you. Your writing is taking a beating. Why? Because it isn't using rhetoric to its advantage. But as a student of Writing Study 101, we know that he could have used rhetoric to defend his argument.
A message from previous Writing Study students.
I covered everything that was required and still didn't get the mark that I wanted.
My writing was not reaching the audience that I intended, and I did not convey my ideas properly.
My writing usually receives a vague mark, and audience do not believe and understand what I'm saying.
So what can you benefit from learning rhetoric? Your writing communication skills will benefit, resulting in stronger essays and better grades. Let's go to our friend Aristotle and see what he has to say about rhetoric. So here's a definition from Aristotle.
The faculty of discovering the possible means of persuasion in reference to any subject whatever.
So, in modern-day language, Aristotle is talking about the ways that a writer or speaker persuades an audience in any situation. Aristotle later defined 5 pillars: ethos, pathos, logos, kairos, and telos. However, for the sake of time and simplicity, we will exclude kairos and telos and only talk about the 3 most important ones, which apply to our writing.
For ethos, the root word is ethic, and usually pertaining to the credibility of the writer. Pathos, this usually appears to the emotion that people have. For logos, the root word is logic, and it usually looks like the reasoning of the writer and whether they did their homework.
Each of these 3 rhetorical principles are all meant to be used to convince the audience that the writer is correct. It is a way to persuade, hence the art of persuasion.
Let us tell you more details and examples. Logos. Here we address the logic behind our claims. We are trying to convince the audience using reason. To do this, we make sure that there's enough evidence, the evidence is typical of what's expected, it's trustworthy, and is relevant to our topic. So here's an example. Imagine you are trying to convince your university friends to stop eating mac and cheese and to eat more vegetables. Would they be convinced if you just said,
I think we should eat more vegetables?
Probably not, but throw a bit of logos in there and you get,
We should eat more vegetables because they are full of vitamins and minerals that reduce the risk of heart disease and keep us all healthy.
we are showing them there's logic behind what we say and why they should be eating the vegetables. And look at that, our friends are now eager vegetable eaters.
Let us move on to ethos. Here, we want to get the audience to see that we are credible. We want them to know that they can trust us and listen to us. Take this example. Instead of just saying you think that we should eat vegetables because they are good for us, you could mention that you are a nutritionist and you are speaking from experience. That would show them your credibility in this topic, and they are much more likely to trust you.
Pathos can often be used to incorporate emotions into a piece of writing. This is often through descriptive words as well as vivid visual elements. You're using emotions that are already present from society's commonly held values to elicit desire in your audience. For this example, we still talk about how vegetables are good for your health, but we add a sad example of an uncle's tragedy from our life as evidence to support how vegetables are important for our health. Therefore, we now have made you, the reader, sad and worried because you don't want the same thing to happen to you.
Although convincing your friends to eat vegetables is a great idea, what other ways can rhetoric be applied to you? We go on to explore this in academic and non-academic examples. When writing an essay, it is essential to have a strong argument so that you can convince your audience that you are right. Therefore, weak arguments such as, puppy mills are bad and you shouldn't buy puppies from them anymore because it's not good, will not be very persuasive and doesn't use logic to explain why puppy mills are bad. It also doesn't indicate whether or not the reader can be trusted because they are only using examples of themselves as sources. As indicated in the strong example, using statistics and describing the conditions of the puppies' homes created a much more convincing and authentic argument.
Along with that, rhetoric can also be used in your professional lives. Let us see how we would use it in a cover letter, for example. When writing a cover letter, a sentence like, I would like this job because I think my ideas are great and I have some experience in retail, would not conceive your future employer. However, by applying rhetoric principles, you will have a much stronger proposal as to why you are the ideal candidate.
Now to close off, we wanted to show you that throughout our presentation, we also used rhetorical principles to get our message across to you. In the first few slides, we used ethos when we cited Aristotle, who is an expert on the subject of rhetoric, which increases our credibility. For logos, we used logical examples to illustrate our definitions and points, as well as to convince you, the audience, that rhetoric is something that you need. We used accurate and substantial reasoning to support our claims, which was used to convince you the validity of our argument. And finally, we used pathos by adding images to the presentation as well as showing a sad final essay example as a way to evoke emotion in you.
Now we see that rhetoric is a tool which helps us make our language stronger, more effective, and much more concise. Rhetoric is the art of persuasiveness and can be used to win over any audience that you have in mind. Think of it as the hidden gem that we just shared with you. All the best.